And now I am excited to turn the remainder of the service over to Liz for her to share creating change and the conference that she went to this week. I know she has some exciting things to bring to us. So, Liz, the rest of the service is yours.
Thank you, Melba, and thank you, everyone. As Melba mentioned, about a week and a half ago, I went to what's called the Creating Change Conference, and it's a LGBTQ and social justice conference that's been around for well over 15 to 20 years. It's put on by the National LGBTQ Task Force. While it focuses on LGBTQ issues, it also is really great at exploring the intersections of a variety of social justice movements because, as we all know, like nothing exists in silos. Everything is connected in some way. And so we talked a lot about immigration rights and racial justice, disability rights, reproductive justice, economic equality, and so much more. It happened to be through an LGBTQ issue lens, but there was so much that I felt like I could learn, and there were so many activists and organizers doing the work. And I was like, I want to hear what they have to say and learn from them and see what I can take back to Wedgewood, because I think we can all learn from each other. Excuse me. And I had heard of this conference a few years ago, and had always wanted to go. It had always been like a bucket list thing for me to do. And this past conference, I was like, you know what? I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. So I have quite a few slides. So bear with me. It is going to be a little bit long, but there's just so much I didn't want to leave out because I'm so inspired and I'm so excited to share because I learned so much. And there's so much that I'm really inspired to bring to Wedgewood and propose, and I want to learn from you guys. But so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll dive right in because there's a lot that I do want to share. Okay. So this is a picture of one of the sessions. This was actually the North Carolina caucus. I was thrilled to find out that there was a caucus of just folks from North Carolina. And you might be able to see some familiar faces. So we have Cameron Pruitt from the Freedom Center. Bishop Rawls from the Freedom Center is actually the one who took the picture, which is very exciting. And I ran into a few other folks. There were a lot of folks from the Hispanic Federation, which has an office here in Charlotte. And I'm setting up a coffee meeting with them. There were a few other folks from the Charlotte social justice team that I ran into. So that was really thrilling. And I just really tried to be a sponge. And it's funny because the conference was in Las Vegas, which sounds very exciting and fancy. But to be honest, it could have been anywhere because I didn't see any of Vegas other than when I took the Uber to and from the airport. I didn't even leave the hotel because I was so engaged in what was happening. And if anybody ever has the opportunity to go to Creating Change, I definitely recommend it. Okay. So I've broken today's talk down into essentially 3 parts because I think it's really important to kind of frame everything. I mentioned how the conference was, through an LGBTQ lens. However, intersectionality was really like the word of the whole conference. And some folks might be familiar with that word, some folks might not. And we have folks watching live and some folks might be watching later. So I tried to kind of meet in the middle with how I explain things. So please bear with me if there are some things you're already familiar with. I think that's awesome. But I want to introduce intersectionality as a guiding framework for collective action, because there are so many key lessons from Creating Change. And I want to take a moment to explore and discuss how all these different systems of oppression are interconnected. Because here at Wedgewood, we do such a great job of being intersectional because we know that issues aren't on their own islands. They aren't in silos. We know that things are connected. And there are so many organizations and individuals that also work together, work with us, work with other organizations to foster that solidarity because we really are all in it together. Okay, so we're going to dive in really briefly into intersectionality. And I have a brief video to share. This is Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a brilliant, brilliant woman. She coined the term intersectionality. And although this video, it's very, very brief, it's about 1.5 minutes long. this was made for a school setting, but I still think it can apply. So I'm just going to go ahead and show this. Actually, I might need to stop share and reshare with the sound, so bear with me for one moment.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. So I encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out in the classroom, between teachers and students, between students and other students, between students and administrators, and commit themselves to understanding that as a way of intervening and providing equal educational opportunity for all students, regardless of their identities. Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit. It is a relationship between people in history, people in communities, people in institutions. So schools do a good job when they understand that and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in the school for all students to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they come about. So independent schools can take the lead on that to be responsive to.
I'm going to pause it early. So the video does explain intersectionality in a school setting by showing different identities, but they can apply to everywhere in life, because intersectionality, as she just described, it's the lens through which, power comes and collides and it intersects, right? So it's the acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experiences of discrimination and privilege and identities that come together. So I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm a queer woman. I am just as much a queer woman as I am a woman. I can't separate those two things. Those are two things that are so intrinsically linked. And they're a part of my identity because we are all intersectional beings. So for example, a transgender person of color might experience discrimination in a medical setting. They might experience both racism and transphobia. And actually, in the last couple of days after I started working on this presentation, there are government websites that no longer even mention transgender and gender expansive or non-binary identities. They might be trying to erase the word, but that doesn't mean those folks no longer exist. Or someone who is both an immigrant and a member of the LGBTQ community can face, the risk of deportation, but also discrimination because they're a member of the LGBTQ community. So when movements focus on only one of those things, only one issue, that can leave people behind. And so we have to ask ourselves, who is being left out, and how can we make our justice works more complete by making sure everyone is included? And that isn't the work for just one person, one organization. That's important for all of us, and that's one of the many, many reasons why coalition building is so important. And that was really, really driven home during the conference. And so this is, another quote from Kimberly Crenshaw. Can everyone see the screen with my slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So if we can't see a problem, we can't fix a problem. So it's important that we, we're all on our own journeys, and, we're all unlearning and learning things. But if we can't see a problem, we can't fix the problem. And there's so many different ways that we all intersect. And that's why it takes us all working together, And I'm happy to share this out because I am going to try to go through it relatively quick because there's a lot of slides. So if anybody wants to look at this presentation afterwards, I'm more than happy to share it out. So why does this matter? No one experiences discrimination in a vacuum. Social justice efforts, we have to address multiple forms of oppression together. And I've shared a few examples, but there's so many more examples that we can dive into. Every single person on this call has intersectional identities, layers of power and privilege and things that we might have experienced discrimination about. Because justice is interconnected and discrimination is interconnected. So how does this apply to Wedgewood? Well, like I said, justice is interconnected. We stand for social justice. And I think the extravagant welcome is the most beautiful and perfect example of how we recognize how racism and LGBTQ rights and immigration, economic inequality, and disability justice, and so many more things are all connected. And we know that if we only focus on one issue, we miss the bigger picture. That's one of the reasons why I love Wedgewood so much and how we do our services, because, we're lay-led. It's a different topic every single Sunday. It's not just one topic all year round. It's not just one issue all year round. It's a different thing. It's a variety of things, because that's how the world is. And also radical inclusion. We're being truly interfaith and inclusive. That means not just welcoming people, but actively fighting for those who experience multiple layers of oppression. And that's one of our core values. It's one of the first things that led me to say, hey, I want to check Wedgewood out. And it's one of the reasons that I've stayed. Also, faith and action. And I feel like there are a lot of congregations that they might talk the talk, but I haven't seen a lot of congregations walk the walk the way Wedgewood does, and the way that we're continuing to push to walk our walk. There are so many religious spaces that, because they ignore intersectionality, that's great that, someone might want to support like immigration rights or racial justice. That's wonderful. That's so important. But if you're also not talking about women's rights and LGBTQ rights and the intersection of all those things, you're not actually being intersectional. And our values at Wedgewood call us to break down those barriers and stand in solidarity with marginalized communities. And we also, as a congregation, value community over individualism, because we know that no movement can succeed alone. And just as Wedgewood values community and connection, we have to work with other justice movements to make lasting change. So I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. However, I want to take some time to pause and ask y'all, and feel free to share whatever comfort level you have. Have you seen intersectionality play out in your own life? Like, how have you seen that play out in your own life or your own community? And you can just unmute and share. I'm going to actually stop my share screen. Does anyone feel comfortable sharing? I mean, I've shared that I am a queer woman. Both of those things are a part of who I am, and they are so intrinsically linked. Would anyone else like to share how they've seen intersectionality play out in either your own life or your own community? Maybe just think about it.
I'm sort of the opposite of
Sorry, go ahead.
The opposite of intersectionality. I'm ultra, none of the above.
Well, everyone has intersectional identity. So you have a gender identity, you might have a sexual orientation, maybe it's the economic situation that you grew up in. Everyone has intersectionality. So next question, can anyone think of an example where maybe one social justice movement failed to practice intersectionality or failed to include different perspectives?
The healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
The healthcare system. People of color don't really get good healthcare because they don't care about us. So when you go into the emergency room, you experience it you feel it, you hear it. I haven't had that experience because I'm vocal, so I'll say something. A lot of people may not be vocal, they may be just afraid, may not know how to, maybe they're just supposed to listen to authority and don't say anything and don't stand up for the, everybody is not vocal. I've learned to be vocal. But yeah, so in the healthcare system, OBGYN, women of color don't get the care that they need in OBGYN. When they're delivering children, they don't get the care that they need in delivering children. Sometimes they die delivering children because they're not paying attention to them, or they're not listening to the patient, or they're not listening to the patient's spouse or significant other saying that, there's a problem and just letting it go. So healthcare system, mental health, they don't, people of color are not able, or sometimes are afraid to, or don't know how to go get mental health help. So there's those just two ways.
Thomas, I wanted to say that then this may just be my feeling, but as a woman, I also feel that being a senior in society, I think age has something to do with intersectionality as well,
Yes,
because we are looked at differently than a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old.
yeah.
So, I feel that sometimes that we're either respected for our age and our experience, and people look up to us. And then sometimes, oh, that's just an old lady. Don't listen to her. She don't know what she's talking about. So there is discrimination there in that. And I look at it as intersectionality. But also our justice system, our criminal justice system, they have failed. I mean, we have totally failed when it comes to intersectionality. And now with our current administration putting transgender people, moving them if they're female to a male prison, from a male to a female, how horrible is that? How horrible is that? And also with race, it's very discriminatory. It's very discriminatory as far as financial means, the rich versus the poor. So I think we have greatly failed.
Ryan, I saw that you went and muted yourself.
I was just going to piggyback off of Ashanti's statement with the healthcare field, because there is also a lot of just bad knowledge that has been taught in the medical field about minorities, especially when it comes to Black people and pain tolerance and things like that, which then leads into which I guess piles onto what Ashanti was mentioning about the poor healthcare system and people dying because they're not getting the adequate treatment they need. Because when somebody says, "Oh, this hurts," what they may assume, during pregnancy for a white woman may be what she experiences. They may consider, "Oh, this is an 8," but a Black woman, they might, "Okay, it's only a 4 for you because you have a higher pain tolerance," kind of situation. So, and that's where that, like, I see it a lot, and I know there's been some movements to kind of course correct that in the recent years, but it's still prevalent.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so many more examples. I mean, we could spend the next day talking about this, but I just wanted to ask this conversation, or have that conversation briefly, because I think that leads very much into the what part of the whys. Why is this so important? Why is this work important? So I'm going to talk about creating change for a few minutes. So the key lessons that I learned, and I attended so many different sessions. It was a 5-day conference, but there are three main sessions / activations that I really want to highlight. And it was Southern Organizing for Social Change, which is all about building coalitions across movements. And one of the takeaways for me is that, unlikely alliances are powerful. Social justice movements, we have to collaborate, even if we might not align perfectly, right? We still need to work together to amplify our shared goals, because I guarantee you the goals that we share are much more in common than we might realize. But also intergenerational organizing matters. Melba brought up a great point about ageism. And yeah, there are a lot of folks in the movement that might, dismiss the experiences of older folks. And, Bishop Rawls led the session, and she brought up actually, and I had never heard this term before, but it's called adultism. And it's essentially the reverse of ageism, where, younger folks who, they might have a lot to give to the table, but they are dismissed for their experiences. And I'd say both sides of that coin, we don't do a good job. We need to do better talking to each other and working together instead of fighting against each other. That's one thing that I've noticed, in a variety of movements, is we don't do a good job of interorganizational solidarity and communication. And that really matters. That really, really matters. Creating those spaces of mentorship and learning and collaboration, that really helps to strengthen a long-term change. This might be cheesy, but I want to shout out Melba. Melba is such an incredible friend and is such a mentor. I have learned so much from her. And I wish that the movement was better about, better about building those relationships, because that's how we push things forward, is by talking to each other and sharing and not judging each other and assuming that we're just, dismissing each other. So that was a big topic of conversation. And then the Many Paths gathering space. This wasn't a session so much as it was a space that was created throughout the whole conference. And it focused on the role of faith communities and activism. And I did know a few folks at the conference, but I went by myself officially. And, it can be hard to go by yourself and travel by yourself and attend a big conference that you've never done before and feel alone. And I found this space, and it was just such a soft place to land during what was a very emotional and intense, but also very empowering week. And it was truly, truly interfaith. And I learned so much in that space that I want to share with Wedgewood. And so many social justice movements have their roots in faith communities. The civil rights movement started in the church in the South. And I feel like sometimes we forget that. And, there might be different faith traditions that have different beliefs, but we often share core values of justice and love and equality. And building coalitions, not just across the board, but especially through interfaith coalitions, is so important. And how faith communities, we've got to be proactive. And Wedgewood is, but I don't necessarily see that a whole lot in other spaces, because it's not enough for churches and faith spaces to say that they welcome marginalized people if they're not actively fighting for their rights, providing material support, or speaking out against injustice. You've got to walk your talk. And then the final session is, this was actually one of the first sessions that I attended, and it was an all-day institute. And it was the White People's Institute for Ending Racism. And, racism, particularly in the United States, white people are the ones that created racism and created the concept of race. It is up to us to solve the problem. And so while, Black, Indigenous, people of color, in the communities, they bear the harms of racism, we as white people, we must take responsibility for dismantling it in white spaces and white workplaces and predominantly white-led institutions. It is not up to people of color to do that labor. It's up to us. It's up to us. So I'm going to share throughout the presentation just a few things that just really stand out to me. Social media is such a powerful tool, and yes, there's rampant censorship, but there's also really great resources. And these are things that I really have to, remind myself of, because it can be very easy to be bogged down and feeling hopeless. And it's the power of people is stronger than the people in power. The people in power don't want us to know that. They want us to feel disempowered. But when we realize that, we're the ones that actually have power and we can unite, that's how things change. And this is the quote up at the top is someone I follow on social media. and they're an activist, and I learned so much from them. And it's the beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be an anti-racist. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself, and it's the only way forward. Because before we transform systems, we must transform ourselves. And I don't know who exactly said that in the session, but it was one of the facilitators. And I wanted to include that because I think it's so true. And this can be translated into whatever privilege you might hold, right? Whether it's male privilege, being cisgender, being Christian in a predominantly Christian space, but it's interfaith. Whatever privilege you have, it's up to you to use that privilege to help uplift other people. So the 4 Ds of avoidance is one thing that I learned in the session is, a lot of folks, when you're, either not aware of doing the work or you're just starting it, we can get in our feelings like, oh, it's not about race, or it's not about gender, or it's not about, fill in the blank, right? They can get defensive, or like, I didn't mean it that way, or you're just taking it personally, or like, it's not as bad as they say, for denial. And then like despair, right? We can get into despair, like it's too big of a problem to fix. We have to push past these reactions to stay engaged, because we know that this is real. We know that racial discrimination is real. We know that sexism is real. And so I'm gonna go past these for time, but I'll share this out. But avoiding white saviorism, or avoiding like straight saviorism, or mansplaining, fill in the blank, right? That is really important. And what that means is we have to support and advocate without centering ourselves. For the people in privilege, we can't center ourselves. And so I'm just using white saviorism as an example. And that happens when privileged people step in as heroes instead of actually listening and following the leadership of those most effective. So you want to be an ally, not a savior. And so what that means is you got to listen first, support, but you don't want to lead. They need to be the ones in the lead. And then lift up their voices. Sometimes the best thing you can do as an ally is to be silent and say, hey, take my space, take my position of privilege and speak, because they will listen to you. So I'm gonna go real quick through this, and I'm gonna, forgive me, I'm gonna skip through this for time. So building community and collaboration. Effective activism is all about relationships. It's all about, like, we can't do this ourselves. And I know that for me, I get very overwhelmed very easily. The world it's on fire, both physically and metaphorically. But how I calm myself down is saying, I can't do this alone. It's not up to me to do it alone. Building those relationships is important. So when we're building relationships, grassroots relationships, we have to focus on those real connections, listening more than talking, and understanding that, we are, as Wedgewood, an interfaith community, positioned really, really well to uplift these issues for social change, because we have such a diversity in our reach. So I'm going to skip past these as well. So what can we do, not just individuals, but as Wedgwoodians, right? We can educate ourselves and others without expecting marginalized groups to do the labor. We can leverage our own individual privileges to amplify. So BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color, the LGBTQ community, and like other represented voices. And we move beyond symbolic inclusion, ensure that folks in those marginalized communities have real decision-making power, and not just people in those positions of privilege. So how to fight back and organize. And I know this might feel redundant because Wedgewood already does a lot of this, but I want to go ahead and share it anyway, because I think these are just so great, such great infographics. So focusing our energy, right? The changes that are going on right now, especially with the current administration, they're coming out fast and furious. And that's on purpose. It's on purpose. They want you to feel overwhelmed. And it can be so easy to just feel hopeless. But it is much more effective to focus on the issues that really matter to you. So For some folks at Wedgewood, like Palestine might be the thing you want to focus on, or immigration rights or LGBTQ rights. And you can focus on more than one thing at once, but it's also important to focus on the things that you can control and the things that you can do something about. If there's something that you can't do anything about it, don't focus on that. Focus on the things that you can do. What matters to you that you control? Can you have a conversation with someone in office? Can you write a letter or call your senator, or have a conversation with someone who voted against, in a way that you don't agree with, that you feel voted against human rights or social justice? Have that conversation with them. See if you can change their heart and mind. Can you work on working conditions, or highlighting how important immigration rights are? Pick a focus, right? Bring together a diverse group of people, but also listen instead of educating. We've got to, it can feel really easy to want to dive right in and jump right in, but you have to pause and listen instead of educating first. And then, you can map out, with your coalition, local politicians and lobbyists, and develop a plan with a variety of tactics. Write the letter, but also phone call, talk to political staff, learn about the legislative process, and 3 things that you can bring into the specific meetings. Bring people on who have technical knowledge, invite new participants and experts, but also managing accountability, because burnout is something that we're already starting to see this early in the game. So activist steps: no action is too small, and don't shame anyone for their activist actions. Everybody has their own tolerance level. And everybody has their own different amount of resources or mental capabilities or different risk capacities. And self-care is essential. Self-care is essential. And this is another meme where, like, the goal is to make everyone feel overwhelmed. Don't let them succeed. We all, as individuals and as a community, we have gifts and talents and expertise that can be targeted and focused. Okay, so I'm going to skip through this. So a few things that we can turn into actions. So I'm going to ask y'all, and I realize this is redundant, but for folks who might be new to Wedgewood or are watching our recording for the first time, what are some things that Wedgewood's already doing? Can we share? What are some things that we're already doing? It's quite a lot.
We're already in the community. Like, we're very active in both, not just like being present physically, but speaking out.
Yeah. What else are we doing?
We're involved with the people in the community. I mean, literally involved with them. When we do our laundry project, we're in there talking to them, communicating with them, interacting with them, smiling with them, even if we don't know the language. We've helped out the Jewish voices. We're there doing what we're supposed to do as a community. Like Melvin says, we walk the walk and talk the talk, walk the walk. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing, not just sitting here. We're out there doing, literally on the ground. We helped out with the homeless people with another we also collaborate too with other organizations. So we did that with feeding the homeless down there near the Vapa Center. We participated in the marches, the parades.
So we do a lot, but sorry, go ahead.
I think we do a really good job of collaborating with other organizations. I know one day last week, I talked to 4 different immigration groups in one day, just talking about what we can do together. And we do a lot of that. But also, I think, with other faiths, and I think this is very unusual for a church. We have Jewish friends, we have Muslim friends, we have friends of all the spectrum, and we collaborate with them and we learn from them. And I think that's a very unique collaboration for a quote church community.
Yeah. So we do a lot, but I mean, I think we all also feel like we can be doing more. And so, I mean, if you saw on the screen, like I've come up with a few of my own ideas of things we can further do. So we have One thing that I would, love to maybe bring is, maybe doing a monthly interfaith service in person, because having those interfaith spaces is important. Maybe hosting some anti-racist workshops or some community teach-ins and partnering with other organizations. I am building a new website for Wedgewood, because our current one's, really nice, but we kind of need a refresh. And I recently had the idea to maybe create a resource hub on our website. But and this is me, like, I genuinely hear from folks, like, what ideas do you have? Because I know that there is so much more we can do. So I want to hear from y'all. What can we do? And I'm going to write it. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to write this down.
All of what you just said is excellent, because we need a resource. So someone that heard, saw one of our videos or saw one of our sessions or might want to get involved in a particular project, and you will have that easy way, that easy access. So that's a great point. You come up with great ideas with the social media part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would. We talk about the people who listen who are not here.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to give them a way to give us direct feedback. What do they think? I want to listen to them.
And for those who are watching, I'm typing our email on the screen. If you have ideas, email us. Send us your ideas. We want to hear them. Seriously.
Or if they have an organization that we could participate in, or interested in participating, collaborating, and doing work together. Mm-hmm. It's always better when you have more people together, going towards the same direction.
Listening was the big part of what your talk was about. Mm-hmm. And I think that to create venues whereby we can listen more extensively, would be of value.
Yeah, because we have folks that come on our Sunday services, but sometimes, and you even saw I skipped over a few slides. I mean, sometimes the 20 minutes is, you want to have more than that. So yeah, I think that's that could be good too, having some teach-ins. I will say that I mentioned the Freedom Center was at the conference, and we've had some conversations I need to follow up on about maybe doing some collaborative stuff, because they have a physical space, maybe them sharing their space with us to do some stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to share too much, because I want to, have something concrete, but yeah. What else? Anything else?
That's a start.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just, one question to think about. So we have already established some relationships with organizations and communities, but how can we maybe strengthen our relationship with them and strengthen our collective impact?
Again, listening and communication, gatherings, getting together, talking about ideas, just what we're doing right here, but maybe in a space where we're together in physical form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think too, and I know time is limited, but we can go to some of their events when they're sponsoring, when the White American Coalition is having a news conference or sponsoring something. We need to go to show we're not just expecting them to support us, we support them.
Yeah.
By our presence. And I think that's one thing that maybe we're not doing enough of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And this isn't something where we're going to come up with solutions right now, but I wanted to at least plant the seed and get the ideas percolating. And so that actually leads me into the final slide. This is a call to action. So I want everyone to think about, not just as individuals, but also as Wedgwoodians, right? What is our role in social justice movements? And, as was just brought up, if, there are initiatives, events, things that are, coming up or organized by, community partners, we've got to show up for those. Remember, because solidarity is an ongoing practice, and social justice is most effective when we work together. So stay engaged, also practice self-care, because remember, they want us to be overwhelmed. The people that want to take away our rights, they want us to feel overwhelmed and helpless. Don't let them. So it's okay to say, you know what? I'm at capacity right now. I'm out of spoons. I'm going to stay home this evening, but then tomorrow I'm going to go out and do stuff. We tag your team, tag in your teammate, right? And then also us uplifting. Wedgewood's going to do more things, but we're also going to support our community that is doing more things as well. So stay informed, stay engaged. We've already gotten started, but we're going to keep going. So thank you. I realize that was a very long session, but there was just so much that I wanted to share. Like, I was kind of overwhelmed putting it together because I was like, there's too much. How do I pare it down? But it just what's been on my heart. And I don't know if I was the most eloquent in sharing it, but it's just it's the message I wanted to bring today.
Thank you. Very
It was very
informative.
good. It was very good, Liz. You're always eloquent speaker. So thank you.
Thank you.
For all
The
that.
conference was really moving, and I'm still processing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for taking your time going out there and gathering the information.